Wait.
You got to click it. Oh, I thought you were going to click it before you kicked it.
Click it before you kick it.
You got to click the pin
click
before
it
you kick it.
or ticket.
Oh, you just said it.
Click it or
What?
kick it.
What did I say?
Kick it. Welcome. It's my turn, isn't it? Ooh. Welcome to Hardheaded Podcast. I am your host, Chet Sears, along with Troy, free shot Trussell to my left, and Matt Amos to my right. He was expecting me to say sandbagger, but I didn't do it. We're glad you're with us today. I kind of did it by saying you expected me to do it, but you know.
And then you still brought it up. Yeah,
I did. That's clever.
I don't think that one's going away, Matt.
We are going to have fun today. We're going to have Matt share what's on his mind. Then we're going to get into a listener-provided top three that was probably the most challenging top three that we've had to date.
I spent more time on this one than I have any of the other ones in the past.
Combined.
Probably.
Looking forward to that then. And then Troy's going to close us out with a good word. So,
right on.
Matt, what's on your mind, my friend?
Well, as you all know, being that you said sandbagger, because I was debating what I was actually going to talk about. But
Now we're going to talk about how much I beat Chet in that sporting clay competition.
So, while shotgunning admittedly is not my forte or my favorite thing to do, while I am better than Chet,
Trophy proves it.
the
Lifetime achievement
long
award.
range shooting and hunting is kind of my thing.
Long range hunting?
And shooting. Yep.
What's the closest you've ever been to an animal that you've killed?
The closest I've ever been? I've been pretty close.
Do bugs count?
No, like in a meat gathering situation.
So the bison that you are talking about is actually not the closest
No.
that I've been.
Yeah?
The closest I think was my actual real bison, not fenced in. He was at 46 yards.
They're both real.
Well,
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Wild bison.
yeah, where I had to wait for
5 days.
5 days, 18 hours a day in a blind.
Yeah.
And I think I've even been closer than that on some of the deer that I've shot.
Okay.
But
You'd rather be at a distance.
yeah, and that's been more so since my injury, just because I don't have to walk as far to get to the animal, and I want to have the capability if I see something that I may not have the time or opportunity to get to. I want to be able to take that animal out, and then I can take my time trekking over to him to do the rest of the work. So I've been going down to Barber Creek long range shooting and hunting school.
Wearing their shirt. Look at that.
Yes.
And I actually just got this one because I just got back not too long ago. And going through their course, I've been down and they've got a level 1 course. They've got a level 2 course. And I've done the level 1 probably 5 times now. Just going through because I try to bring somebody new with me every time I go down so that when I do level 2, I could have a bunch of people that I wanted to be with. Mm-hmm. And one of my buddies, unfortunately, Chase, was not able to go. So it ended up just being me and Josh going down for level 2 as far as buddies, but you always meet people there that are interesting, people. And most of those are, hunters and they shoot guns. So you already have something in common to talk about. But the course is instructed by James Eagleman. He spent 26 years in the Army. He was a sniper and a SOTIC instructor, and SOTIC is the Special Operations Target Interdiction Course. So he was their sniper instructor for Special Operations.
I almost thought you said soda instructor.
SOTIC. For the Army, though, it could have been soda.
You gotta. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Was that you?
He's probably, a bullet's going to be coming through the window in any minute now.
Oh, no, he is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I will say he's definitely better than me, but I'm trying to work to get to a fraction of what he's able to do. Mm-hmm. But the layout there is phenomenal. So we stay in an old, it's down in Eufaula, Alabama. And you can, fly into either Atlanta or Columbus, Georgia, maybe. And you're, within an hour, 45 minutes of the property, depending on which airport you go into. And you stay in an old tobacco barn that they've refurbished into rooms and a kitchen. And the food is cooked by Tony and his wife, Felicia, and the food is phenomenal. They don't do this for every trip, but they did have a seafood or a crawfish boil.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. Like, it was so good.
Okay.
Chet's got something to say about that.
Well, I saw a picture, and the corn and potatoes were separate from the crawfish.
Yep.
Explain.
I think that they just cooked I think they had so many, and they didn't have enough room in the
They
pot.
just did everything
pot.
separate?
No, well, all the vegetables were together, and then I think the crawfish were cooked first, and then put into a cooler, and then close the cooler, and then they put all the vegetables in because there's just so much because they're trying to feed so many people.
Yeah.
And
then you probably got some people that don't even. This is probably their first time.
oh yeah, it was definitely my buddy's first time eating crawfish, and so I had to show him how to peel them apart, and
I do have a tip for anyone who wants to boil their own
Wash.
crawfish.
Oh, go ahead.
The more you cook in one certain pot, because you season it all in the beginning while it's warming up.
Yeah.
The more you cook it, the more seasoned it gets.
Mm-hmm.
So what I always like to do is all your vegetables, potatoes, onions, mushrooms, corn, whatever you want to cook with it, cook all that first in your first pot. And, when you pour it out, put it in a cooler, keep it warm, and then start cooking your crawfish, and they will get more seasoned as the day goes on, depending on how many you're cooking.
My crawfish boil tip is wash your hands before you go to the bathroom.
I could see that. Same with chopping peppers or whatever you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it just goes hand in hand. I mean,
It goes hand in mouth.
hand in. Oh gosh.
but yeah, so anyway, I mean, the food is incredible. I mean, it's a full breakfast in the morning. You come back for, so the mornings are spent kind of in the classroom, learning the kind of the science behind long range and the reasons why they do things the way that they do them. And I know that there's a lot of debate out there in the hunting community about what constitutes an ethical shot, and that would be a shot that you can make. And so, before I went to the course, I'd look at, 300 yards and I'd question myself on that shot. I'd be like, I don't know if I want to take that shot.
Right.
And now, I mean, after one day of shooting at the long range class, going through the instruction and then sitting through and learning how to approach the weapon, how to get behind the weapon and all that kind of stuff. I mean, day one, you're shooting 1,000 yards, and I mean, you're shooting
Nice.
groups that are, the size of a softball, and it gets to the point and they've got these animal targets made out of steel, and then they've got the vital area that's like a white gong in the center of it. And they've got those from like 300 to 1,000 yards, and you end up, hitting that white vital area so many times, it just becomes boring. And so, because it just becomes so easy, and you start aiming for, like, they have an elk at, like, close to 1,000 yards. And so you're like, well, I'm going to put a little ding in that tip of the antler, call out which antler you're going to try to tap, and then you shoot that. Or, if you've got the deer out at 800 yards or whatever it is, and, it's got the ear sticking up, well, I'm going to give him an earring, or I'm going to give him a nose, or I'm going to give him an eyeball, and so you're, it just boosts your confidence because you're looking at that vital area, which is, the size of a
Paper plate.
Yeah.
Bigger. Yeah.
and, you're hitting these super small targets. And all the years that I spent in the Marine Corps, I was never a sniper or anything like that. I was a designated marksman for my second tour, but the way that the Marine Corps teaches shooting is completely different than you would do to hunt, because, a lot of
Different scenario.
it's a different scenario. So with that animal, you want to make sure, they go into retained velocities and, what that velocity is to make sure that it's an ethical shot when you hit. And you learn to read wind, and he wrote the book, literally, the Army Sniper Manual. He wrote the book on reading wind. And that's what really made him different than any other sniper out there, is he could look at the mirage coming up off the ground and tell you what the wind speed is based on that mirage that's coming up.
Oh, wow.
And so he's kind of imparting that knowledge on you as you're hunting, how to read that. And then it gets even deeper. So the course I just came back from was level 2. And, level 1's highly focused on the equipment, and the basic long range shooting stuff. The level 2, so everybody's like, well, you get the rangefinder and you get the gun, and they talk to each other and tells you what you need to do. The only equation there is calling the wind. And that's really what it comes down to. But level 2 focuses on what if that equipment fails? What do you do? And so it goes back to the old school type stuff of learning to range an animal with your reticle inside your gun. So, and learning to judge an animal. So, if I'm out on a moose hunt and I've got a animal out there, if I got the moose out there 500 yards, how do I judge the size of that animal? Do I just listen to my guide that says, oh yeah, that's a 60-inch animal, where the guide just, may just be trying to, get you to get one down. And, you can range that animal, look at them in your scope, see how many MOA or minutes of angle wide that is, and then using an equation to judge the size of that animal. And so extremely, like my brain was burning on level 2, because there was some math involved in being able to, read the mirage, read the wind, and
I stayed up till 10:15 doing some math with my daughter one time. It's like, that's too much long division for me.
Now
I'm out.
Now that what was kind of
funny,
funny
going to have to get closer.
Is my daughter, my oldest, when we did this whole coronavirus thing, and they were at the end of the 2020 school year, when everybody went online, and she was doing some math problems and had to do with trigonometry. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's my jam. And like in school, I was terrible at it, right? Math was not my...
Because they didn't use any hunting examples. If they had, you'd have been locked in.
all over it.
Now, so yeah, I'm using these angles, and I'm like, okay, that's basically a trajectory without the arch, and being able to solve those equations just based on what I learned from practical application in the hunting world. But that, and then the first day of the level 2, you go through a bunch more technical stuff in the first classroom portion, and then in the afternoon you're going out, and they've got mock blinds set up. So you're shooting from, like a hunting chair, and you've got your blind there, or you've got shooting sticks or the prone, and trying to engage those targets effectively. And there you're trying to gauge how far with each of these setups you're effective to. Where are you comfortable? How can you make an effective and ethical kill on an animal with each of these setups? So from a blind, I may find out that 900 yards is my max, whereas on the prone I can go forever, as far as that bullet's going to go.
Yeah.
And then they start talking about, from supersonic to transonic to subsonic, and doing your drop scale factors and stuff like that. It's super cool, and it's basically rocket science for, an idiot, because I'm definitely not a rocket scientist, but I understand the bullet.
I didn't know they were into that social stuff too. Transonic?
Transonic, that's a thing.
Never heard of it.
It's transitioning from supersonic
okay.
to subsonic.
Yeah.
But I literally learned
Chet's
more.
losing it.
I know it.
I'm just going to stop right now.
I learned more in that level 1 class than I learned in my entire time in the Marine Corps about shooting. And strangely enough, from an Army dude.
What do you shoot? Like a 6.5 Creedmoor? That's she, her. That's that round's preferred pronouns. I shoot a 30-06. Him. He, him. Man.
I think it's they, we, or they, them.
I'm sorry
I don't know
if we offended anybody just now.
But super super cool place to go. The instruction is incredible, and I love it.
That so when you had just gotten back, like I didn't even know what to say because I enjoy shooting, but a lot of I don't know, it's kind of like basketball to me. Like I like shooting baskets, I like shooting a gun, and I like single 6 revolver, and I like shooting a rifle, and I don't mind holding off to hit the target, and I'm pretty good out to about 250, 300. I hunt in a place where I can't even shoot that far, So when you're like the twist rate on a barrel versus the weight of the bullet and what the bullet's made out of versus the wind, and I'm busting clay targets at 1,100 yards and this math deal and this thing and mirage, and I just blanked out. Like I was like, what?
See,
Like, at what distance does all that come into play? Because I will know my limitations at that moment.
so typically about 500 yards.
Okay.
But I would have done the same thing had I not been to the class. So if somebody had said these things to me before I had been there, and the way that he presents is just, it's so seamless and so easily understandable. Like the first time I went, my wife went down with me.
That's what I was going to bring up. Like, this is a thing, like the level 1 is basic enough to bring somebody, like bring your spouse and have fun in air conditioned. Is it air conditioned?
Yeah. So the shoot house is air conditioned, heated. So you're comfortable. It's very well done. And here she is. The only time that she's ever shot with me, and this is what she told James. Well, the only time I shot with him was we were at the range here in town. It was a 100-yard indoor range, and she's shooting my 30-06, and it knocked her off the stool. And so, it was a good time. And so going there, and shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor that they. With not much recoil, and it's all suppressed.
Yeah.
So it's an enjoyable learning environment. And here she is, only having shot one other time in her life, hitting targets at 1,000 yards.
And so when you go, do you bring your own gun? What's the?
No. So they provide everything. So the fee for the course includes your room and board, your food, and ammunition, and then they provide the weapons, because the guns that you're using are the Barber Creek rifles, and the reason that you're using their rifles.
So they make their own weapons.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the reason that you're shooting those is because they want to take out every.
You show up with grandpa's 60-year-old gun with a blister pack scope from Kmart.
Yeah. Well, and you're going to spend all this time trying to sight that rifle in to make sure that it's on, and it's not conducive to the class. And so they want to take out, they know that you've got a perfect rifle there. So the only variable is you and the wind.
Yeah.
And so they really focus on that. And we had a really good time down there. We went with a couple of other couples down there as well. And it was a nice getaway.
Yeah.
Highly recommended if you're into hunting at all, whether it's long range or not, because even at 300 and in, you're looking at 300 yards now and you're like, that's a chip shot. Yeah. Because I don't know how many times I've been, when I was growing up, and sighting in rifles with, the older guys or whoever it was. And, they're like, oh, well, the wind pushed that one. Mm-hmm. It's like, nope. Wind really
not at 60 yards.
So, even at 100 yards, the wind's really not affecting most calibers, because the bullet's moving so fast that, those factors don't come into play.
Yeah.
They really come into play at, longer, or what he calls medium range stuff.
Yeah. So you want to, like, Christmas this year, get Hannah and Ashley long range shooting getaway?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
I don't think that'll work out.
I think you say that. I really think it would because
I could just see that. They open it up. And but Matt said you'd love it.
Well, and I really think that they would enjoy it.
Matt, we got a problem down here.
No, because I'll be going with you. So
No.
and I know
At our Christmas present opening time.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But I'm pretty sure they would go. Now, the town itself of Eufaula, for the
There's Lake Eufaula.
Do they
It's
have
a big bass lake.
huge. So huge.
Oh yeah, my wife would love to go do that too.
So huge Bass Lake, and so
Do they have a winery around there anywhere?
they do, and they actually.
Hey,
so,
all right, now we're getting somewhere.
So for the
Now we're getting warmer.
for the women folk, the house where they filmed, or where Reese Witherspoon from Sweet Home Alabama,
Oh yeah,
that house, they can go look at that house, and there's a whole bunch of plantation style homes, and I mean it's just a really cool little town. And you're talking about the lake, so we were going so I went down when this whole pipeline thing got hacked.
Oh yeah, back when they shut down the East Coast gas supply.
So, and everybody started hoarding gas, and of course I drove down because I was with a buddy in Kentucky, and I drove down and get there on one tank of gas, but driving around I was like, I need to fill up. So I go into town not knowing that there was an issue. And every gas pump has got the plastic baggie over the thing, right? And I'm like, no, I didn't think the problem was with diesel. But apparently everybody was still hoarding
Everything.
diesel. So, but we were driving up to find gas, and we go by the lake, and I mean, we're talking, I don't know how much these rigs cost, but
Probably around 100,000.
but these professional bass fishermen with their names on the side of the boat and their truck that matches the boat,
The wraps. Yeah.
all pulling out and doing all kinds of things. And I'm guessing they were practicing for a tournament that weekend or something. But
It's kind of like golf. They typically get their practice on Monday, Tuesday. Tournament starts on Thursday. That's typically how they go.
that would have made sense. But it's a super cool feel to the place. I mean, it's.
I mean, as far as it's what it sounds like you're describing, as far as not just the instruction that you get, but the overall experience. This is like first class, top of the line,
100%.
hard to beat
Yeah.
anywhere else.
Yeah, and of course the instruction you get is the best that you can get.
Yeah.
And so I highly recommend it. I've always had fun when I go down there, and like I said, I just got back, so that's what's been on my mind because
Yeah.
I'm already thinking about going back and doing level 2 again.
How many levels do they have?
Right now, 2. And they're getting ready to, he said that he didn't want me to come back for another level 2 until they got this other property purchased. They're working on a property right now that's actually got hills and valleys that you can shoot across because the wind in cross canyon shooting is just a little bit different. And then,
Yeah.
they explain that how wind actually flows like water and speeds up in places because of the terrain.
Yeah. No, it's exactly flows like water. I know that.
You do?
No, it does. My wife's an engineer, so I know things like that.
We actually had an engineer in class. But super, super cool, really great people. I mean, they've got that Southern hospitality thing down to a T. I mean, very, very, very good time.
Awesome.
very good.
And I'm thinking maybe we can bring James on at some point to talk about long range shooting.
I'm going to blank out at some point in that conversation.
Well, and his time as a sniper in the Army. And
It'd be great to get him up here and like have him shooting some Kansas wind. Like that'd be pretty neat to see.
he's done it.
Oh, no doubt. I don't, he'd probably enjoy the challenge.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing what's on your mind, Matt. We are going to go to a commercial break brought to you by our sponsor, Admiral's Pennant.
When would I start using Admiral's Pennant beard oil if I wanted to start growing out a beard?
Like literally right now. That peach fuzz that you have on your face, as it's growing in, that is when you need to start conditioning the beard because the follicles are typically not hydrated enough, and so that oil helps in that hydration, cuts down on the itching, cuts down on any of the redness and flaking that you might have when you're growing out a beard. And that flaking is basically your skin being dehydrated because it's forcing it into that follicle.
Where can I get some of this?
Well, you can go to admiralspennant.com. Admiralspennant.com. Tell them Hardheaded sent you. There's several different scents that have really good descriptions on them. So take a look at what's out there, and they're all natural. No synthetic substitutes.
No synthetics.
So admiralspennant.com.
Get you some beard oil.
Let them know that Hardheaded sent you. And we're back. Thank you for staying tuned to the Hardheaded podcast. We are moving into the top 3. Matt's squeaking today. We have to find some WD-40 that has fish oil in it
For his hinges.
The listener submitted top 3 subject of today is hard. It's long. So, top 3 historical figures who stood firm in the face of overwhelming opposition.
That's
Top 3. I'll
Top
say that
3.
again for those of you who are taking notes. Top 3 historical figures who stood firm in the face of overwhelming opposition. That was submitted by Gene Dodson. Thank you, Gene. This one, again, like we were talking about earlier, heavily researched. And he actually provided an example when he submitted this idea. And it was the picture that I've seen. I'm sure you guys have seen it as well. It's a black and white photo taken in Germany, I'm assuming, of a bunch of Germans giving the Heil salute thing. And there's like one dude right in the middle of the frame that's just sitting there with his arms folded like, nah, I'm not doing that. So somebody that's going against, a huge movement in one direction, and it takes an extreme amount of courage to show or to take your stand, if you will. So, Troy, we're going to start with you.
all right. Speaking of Hitler and his regime, my number 3 is Winston Churchill.
Okay.
It was said.
Go ahead.
Oh.
That may or may not be one of our top 3s.
Oh, okay. All right. It was said that he may have been the man who won the Second World War. Not only did he inspire the British nation to go against Hitler in Germany, he also helped his allied forces do the same. So, and he did, so while I was researching this, and I've heard this before, but he had a group of people that would give him stuff going on in the war and in the world. They would give him, intelligence.
Yeah.
And sometimes that intelligence wasn't hard facts, and it was a little, fluffed up, whatever for him. And he told them in the beginning of the war, like, no, I want you to not add anything to this. Don't take anything away from it. Just give me the hard facts. And that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And so these were given to him throughout the war. And it was said that it helped him be successful in his stance against Hitler and Germany. So,
well, cool. I may or may not add a little bit more to that a little bit later in the episode.
Hey, good. I hope that you do. Yeah, so he made all his decisions on facts and truth. Number 2.
He was a hard-headed individual.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So number 2 is Harriet Tubman. She stood in the face of adversity. She was an escaped enslaved woman who became a conductor, in quotes, for the Underground Railroad before the Civil War. So she led people to freedom before the Civil War started.
Yeah. Also being considered to be put on the $20 bill.
Oh, is that still in? I think, didn't we talk about that before?
I don't know. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, and don't you have up on your lease, isn't part of the Underground Railroad that goes through your lease up there?
I don't think so.
I thought we were talking, and I thought he said that.
I don't know.
He thought it might have been a part of it.
There's a whole lot more research that needs to be done before we can consider this, but a fact. But there were pretty certain that there was there is a cemetery there, and some of the people that were buried in the cemetery from the 1860s were black, and they were from the South, and so that there's some rumors, that or some educated. There's people that are in the know that have some information that think that that was a whole part of the times there.
Very cool.
Yeah, which we've got a couple cedar trees there that were probably around during that time, like that my kids camp under, which is pretty cool. I mean, I don't know. It's just the U.S. is so young, but if you go way back in the 1800s and think that something significant was going on under the same structures or trees that you can still see today, is pretty cool. When I went to Europe, that goes exponentially further back in the past.
Very cool. So yeah, she was also a nurse and a Union spy and a woman's suffrage supporter.
And carried a firearm.
Yes. I don't know. Did either of you see that new movie that just came out about her last year?
It's on Netflix or something like that. It's on my watch list thing.
Yeah. It looked pretty modernized, but it still looks good. I don't know. We'll report back if you see it. Yeah. So Harriet Tubman. And then number one, I have for top three historical figures, Martin Luther King Jr. I think he's, one of the most important names of the 20th century, civil rights activist. He led the civil rights movement, eventually ending institutional segregation across the country. He got a Nobel Peace Prize and the Presidential Medal of Freedom on the way. And the third Monday in January is now celebrated.
Yeah.
By Martin Luther King Jr.
And it's just sad to see what's going on today on the resegregation efforts, and a lot of this critical race theory is trying to undo what he did, fought for and died for.
Yeah.
So
yeah, very stood his ground in the face of adversity, and
did it peacefully.
Yeah, very peacefully. That's what.
That's a good list, man. You almost had me twice though.
Yeah, those three were the top three that came to mind.
Because my third, Martin Luther.
Ah.
Yes. So
Reformation.
One of the key figures in the Protestant Reformation had an issue with the Catholic Church, specifically started out with indulgences, which they were basically asking for more money and they'd get more forgiveness or whatever else. And he just kind of started looking at that and then questioning. He opposed that, number one, publicly, and then started questioning everything else, and really came against the Roman Catholic Church at the time, which is a pretty big thing because there was a huge political ties to that, not just religious. So I'm not talking about the Roman Catholic Church of today, but some mafia type stuff that goes on with that. And he was opposed to a lot of what was going on, and specifically justification by faith, not by works. And there was a lot of works and money that needed to be paid, and you need to live a good life, or you can't have a relationship with God, and you have to live a good life that's approved by the church, and not this personal relationship type thing. And so he pushed really hard for that, and then started translating the Bible into German, which is another thing that the church was opposed to at the time, because they wanted to be the ones that were sharing the word of God with the people, and they would share what they would want to share and not share what they didn't want to share. So having a personal copy to do your own study and learn and let the Holy Spirit work through what you're reading was not necessarily condoned at the time.
Well,
from
in the
church.
early formation of the Catholic Church, there wasn't a lot of people couldn't read anyway.
Right.
So the priests were the ones who delivered the messages to the people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see where there would be opposition there for sure.
So definitely stood in overwhelming opposition and showed a lot of courage and a lot of effort, a lot of work there. So I never forget, and wasn't even a professor that I really liked, but one of the history classes I took in college, was an older guy. Heck, he was close to 70 or older. But when we got to Martin Luther, he just broke down and cried, teaching about him and how passionate he was about how passionate Martin Luther was about certain things and how it changed the trajectory of the church as we know it. Pretty cool. So, number 2, Winston Churchill.
Aha!
Yes. But I think this one was pretty interesting because, Troy already covered a lot of the things that he accomplished or did to turn the tide of the war by described as iron constitution. So his will, like his belief, was so strong, and this is the way that we needed to go. They considered it like metal, it was iron. But if you were to look just a few years before all of this, in the 1930s, there was no political party that would touch him with a 10-foot pole. He wasn't liked by anybody in politics, and because of how he behaved, what he felt like, the feelings that he had that he would express about what was going on in Europe and the stance he was taking then was very dogmatic, and people were wanting to do everything they could to have peace, and letting Germany do things that they shouldn't be doing just because if we were to oppose that, then it's going to cause a war, and maybe it will cause a war with them, but if we just stay out of it, then we're going to be okay. We'll negotiate, and he's not going to come across the channel and all this stuff. And he was just very dogmatic towards it and said, no matter what, this is the way it needs to be. And then it finally got to the point where everybody else realized that he was right. And they tapped him on the shoulder and had him, got him as prime minister, got him through the war. And then even in the rebuilding after the war, they're like, we're done with you now because you're still too dogmatic. And they ended up having to bring him back just to help settle everything. So yeah, just somebody that had a man of conviction. And there's a lot of times people don't want to have people like that around. And it got bad enough to where everybody was like, yeah, we need somebody like this. So much so that Halifax, the guy that was going to replace Neville Chamberlain, realized that he's like, I'm not the guy. I'm going to bow out. Like, I don't want to compete against this, because he thought this is the guy that we need at this moment. So pretty neat individual. I've actually visited his grave, which is
Nice.
something, I guess. Number one, Tank Man.
From the photo?
From 1989, Tiananmen Square,
Okay, yeah.
China.
Yeah.
There were a lot of protests for democracy, mostly by college students. And they were demonstrating in Tiananmen Square, started in April, May of 1989. And I think it was June, the Chinese government said that they had had enough and they're going to send in troops and shut this thing down. And the first column of tanks that started driving in was brought to a halt by a guy with 2 bags and a white shirt. And he stood in front of that first tank, and they stopped, and they tried to get around him, and he moved in front of them. He ended up jumping up on the tank and trying to bang on some of the hatches, but literally just had everything pause for a moment. Now, in the end, it didn't turn out well for those students that were protesting. They actually refer to, we talk about Tiananmen Square, but they refer to this event as the Tiananmen Massacre. And there's really no way to know how many people died. The estimates start around 600 people that were murdered for protesting. But I think it's, you want to talk about an individual that they knew what was coming. And I think there's a lot of people that were just like, as long as we're, like a flock of birds or a school of fish, they're still going to be there. They're still going to have a presence, but I'm here with everybody else. And as soon as the military started showing up with their heavy equipment, he stepped out by himself and said, this is not okay. I'm willing to go right now, nobody else by my side, and stop, stand right in front of these tanks. I don't know what they're going to do. More than likely, I would have thought, and I recently watched the video when I was going back and getting a little bit more background on this. I remember all this happening. I'm that old, Matt.
Me too.
But
you probably have more memory of it than I do.
But just somebody could have just popped out the hatch and shot him, like right there, and it wouldn't have been like somebody spraying machine gun rounds into a crowd where there may be a chance that you don't get hit, and they're not specifically singling you out. But he was brave enough and had enough courage to go out and stop. And that picture, in fact, in Hong Kong today, they still gather on the date the military rolled in and started shooting people. And this picture is one of those anthems, if you will, to standing up against communists. So he's my number one. Tank Man.
Tank Man. I like it.
Don't know who he is.
Good deal.
Unknown.
Matt?
Yes.
It's your turn.
Uh-oh. All right. So, number 3, Malala.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Malala?
I've never met her.
So, Pakistani, female.
Was she the one that got shot?
Yep.
In the brain?
Yep.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
So, she defied the threats from the Taliban, and because she wanted an education, and she wanted girls and women to be educated, which the Taliban is strongly opposed to. And they threatened her and threatened her and threatened her. And here you've got a schoolgirl standing up to the Taliban and saying, I'm going to speak my mind and stand up for the right for women to be educated. And she has done that. I can't pronounce her last name. I would butcher it like crazy.
We'll put it on the screen.
But I believe it's you.
Over to you, Troy.
Yousafzai, something like that. But the Taliban finally, they did get a hold of her and shot her in the head, and she survived and became a global symbol for standing up for what you believe in. And she's also the youngest person to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. But I just think that is an outstanding level of courage for a schoolgirl to have those threats and be like, nope.
Still believe it. Still going to say it.
I'm going to stand up for what I believe in.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And I think the Peace Prize there was well-deserved.
Yes.
Agreed.
Number 2, because my number 1 is probably going to cause some discussion.
Discussion is not a bad thing.
Nope, it's going to cause some discussion. Number 2, Oskar Schindler.
Yeah.
So the inspiration behind the movie Schindler's List.
Yep.
But he was a member of the Nazi Party. And during my research, because I didn't really know that much backstory to him prior to doing this research, I'd seen the movie and kind of knew what the movie was about.
Yeah.
But never really did any research into it. But being a businessman, I think he saw that opportunity for making some profits, and then saw the way that the Jews were being treated, and said that I have to do something about that. I can't just stand by and let it happen. And he was arrested multiple times. So he would do black market deals to keep the people that were working for him, the Jews that were working for him, keep them employed, doing all manner of things. And he was arrested for black market trading, or suspicion of black market activities, and once for breaking the Nuremberg laws by kissing a Jewish girl. You've got the entire Nazi Party. You are a Nazi yourself, and seeing that and seeing what those Jews are going through and knowing that they could easily just do that to you. But he did it smartly, saved over 1,200 Jews, I think is what it, what it came out to be. And he died 9 October 1974, and he is actually buried. You know where he's buried?
No, I don't. I think I remember them having a deal for him where all the people that he saved with all their descendants, like, got together to thank him.
Well, actually, so he spent his entire fortune. By the end of the war, he was completely broke. And who came to his rescue? The people that he saved and their families. They would, they helped him out, financially. They helped him because he moved multiple times to try to get through that. But so he died in 1974, and he's actually buried in Jerusalem on Mount Zion.
I knew it was somewhere significant.
And he's the only member of the Nazi Party to be honored in that way.
Yeah.
Very cool.
At a Jewish cemetery, I believe. Yep. Yeah. Like,
pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Because I mean, we look at it now, we look at it as a movie, we look at, those times, and they're so distant to us that we don't really understand what was going on during
what was
those
at
times.
stake.
Yeah. We don't, we're blessed not to have to wonder about that, but he stood firm and said, I'm not going to let this happen.
Yeah.
And saved as many people as he could, which I think is pretty incredible.
That is awesome. Not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but it was about a month ago. Because I was thinking about something similar, is like what you put on the line to risk. And that Green, the Marjorie Taylor Greene or whatever, that conservative loudmouth. She's very loud and somewhat obnoxious, but she tried to debate AOC in the hallway, and AOC's like, I'm out of here. I'm not putting up with this. So she just, the Green just followed her, kind of yelling at her, like, why do you believe this? And why aren't you supporting Israel? And why do you support terrorism? And over this whole, Hamas shooting rockets into Israel deal. And like AOC called the Capitol security, and she felt threatened, and she's serving in Congress and she shouldn't feel threatened, all this kind of stuff. And then I was thinking back to our founding fathers who pledged their lives and their fortunes to see us become an independent nation. You think about Oskar Schindler, like everything that he was doing, if he got caught, he was dead. Like, and how so many people risk so much stuff, and then now in today's age, it's like, oh, somebody talked to me mean in the hallway, and I've got to call security.
We've gotten soft.
Yeah, so soft. Yeah. Sorry for going down the rabbit hole.
No, but I mean, and he did. I mean, he literally gave everything he had to protect other people. And that money was spent on black market goods and food for his workers. Yeah. I mean, that's what he spent his money on. And so, in the end, it came around, and they helped him. Yeah. And then obviously honored him after his death. Yeah. So that was my number 2, Oskar Schindler. Number 1, Jesus.
Yes.
So
let's hear it.
Obviously, he had opposition, and so did his disciples. They all faced opposition as they were trying to show Christianity, and build the Christian faith. And he stood firm on his beliefs. At any point in time, during his life and during his what's the word I'm looking for?
Ministry.
His minute. Thank you. And he could have changed his story to make it more, to where it wouldn't be harming to him, because he knew what was coming. And so I think that standing firm on his teaching and his ministry not only shows that, because he is obviously he's the most influential person in history
ever. Yeah.
And you go back to that, and I think that actually proves that he's the Son of God.
So I'm not disagreeing with that, but I think if you say he's an historical figure, He stood firm in the face of overwhelming opposition. Like
And
a courageous act.
I knew that's where this was going.
Jesus could have also smited every person. You look at Schindler and a Luger would have taken him out. You look at the tank guy, they could have just run him over. Like Jesus was the person in a position of authority during all this time, and he chose not to be, right? So he's the God of the universe, and he knows what's happening.
True, also true.
And went through. I'm not saying he didn't experience pain and
but that's my whole point is that he put himself in that position. And he felt pain because he was human at that point in time. He felt pain. He felt, he had emotions because he wanted to be among us. And so to teach us,
I think so.
Because at any point in time, he could have just said, nope, I'm out, and zoop, he's just gone.
Yeah, but so I think that, and we're just at semantics here, really. Like the courage to face the opposition is the way you're looking at it. I'm looking at it as how gracefully restrained he was in allowing it to happen the way it did, for our benefit. Right. So that's just, I don't know. That's why I would say maybe not on this list, but I'm not going to argue with you too much.
Well, I also look at it from the perspective of, yeah, he did it for us, but when he was human, he was the perfect example of how to be obedient to the Father.
Yeah.
Because that he was basically living out obedience through his whole life.
And is setting that example for us. And it's tough. But he did it, again, as a human, which I think comes back to he's still the ultimate that stood up against the opposition because he chose to put himself here.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And he knew that he was going to go through that. And
that's where my point is that it's like me getting in the ring with Mike Tyson and winning. It's clearly because Mike Tyson restrained his abilities.
He was graceful
to make my nose touch the back of my head.
Or miss a piece of your ear.
Right. Yeah. we'll have eaten before so he's not hungry. But so that it's a different angle, but I 100% agree on the fact that he allowed himself to be in a position to be the sacrifice for our sins, and him allowing it was his choice, and all the effort that he put into his time on the earth was for no other reason than to have a relationship with us, which is fantastic. And again, would always be on the top of all of our lists of top 3 people that ever walked the earth. And I can understand how you're bringing it on the top 3 people who stood in the face of overwhelming opposition, because the Romans wanted him gone. The Jewish Sanhedrin wanted him gone.
Yeah.
Like everybody was like,
Well, and even if you look at it, through a non-believer's looking piece, because we're all believers, but if you look at it from that and you just consider him like the
good teacher.
Yeah, like the
prophet, or
Muslims just consider him a prophet, a great teacher.
Yeah.
That would fit their list.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's based on, we're all believers, but everybody out there may not be.
Well,
and I would say that if so it's maybe my way to introduce him to people who may not believe, to go research that and see exactly what he went through and why would somebody put themselves through that, and why would they not, if they weren't the Son of God, why would they not change at the last minute?
There were so many
I'm
opportunities.
I'm going to save myself.
Yeah, if he was just a normal human, he had so many opportunities to step out of the path that led to his crucifixion.
Right. And then his disciples, who all ended up dead, stuck to that teaching, and they believed in him that much. So if they believed in him that much to the point where they would be beheaded or crucified upside down because they didn't want to be crucified like he was, why would they? At any point in time, they could have said, "Nope, I give it up. But I think that's just more proof that he is the Son of God. And so that's kind of why I brought it up, to spark that discussion a little bit.
I'm with you. That's a good spark of discussion. And just talking about the crucifixion, we covered this a little bit a few Sundays ago. That I'd never heard this before. But you go back to root words, and I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but if you go back in the Latin to where we got the word that we use all the time, excruciate. Like if you're going to talk about the worst pain that you go through, typically excruciating is the adjective you put with that. And so going back to that Latin word, whatever it is, it's actually tied to
crucifixion.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like the worst that you can feel.
Right.
Is comes from the actual way that the Romans would kill people on a cross through crucifixion. So for a man to come on the earth and say the things and teach the things that Jesus did, and that every organized people group around him, whether they be Jewish leadership or Roman rule, didn't want him there anymore, and all he had to do was go away into the shadows. And he's like, I'm going to stand against this opposition and knowingly know that the end of the path is going to be the most excruciating way that a Roman had figured out how to kill somebody, which, by the way, the Romans had a lot of practice on figuring that out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like that, for an individual to do that, I mean, if heck, this goes back to...
Well, and even Nero was the Jewish king, whatever.
Roman.
Roman
emperor.
Was he the Roman emperor at that time? Oh, okay.
Not at that. It was later. He was the Roman emperor later. He was the one that was persecuting the church in Acts.
Okay, that's right.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah, he'd like douse them in wax.
Oh, just whatever I could do to burn them down.
Yeah. Crazy. So,
and one of the theories is that Nero watched Rome burn. That was all set up to say that the Jews burned Rome down, so that everybody in Rome would hate the Jews. Like, I mean, there was a lot of cruelty, and a lot of times we look back at the Christian church now, and it's hard for us to understand persecution. So if you go back and look at what was going on back then, I mean, persecution was like you're going to get killed in the worst way possible. So, yeah, I'm with you there. Looking at different windows. There's
depends on perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that top three. And we're going to move right on to a good word by our friend, Mr.
Three Shot. How did I know you were going to say that? All right. So on the topic of standing firm, I'm coming at you with Ephesians 6:12 and 13. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. That's who we're fighting against. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. So, whatever opposition you are facing, if you believe that strongly against it, stand firm.
Well, and understand the bigger picture, right?
Right.
Yeah, this is not just, it may not be just the thing that's got you worked up right now. It may be something totally bigger than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for believers, I love that verse because it's not, it kind of goes back to what you're always saying, having coffee and a donut. It's not you that I'm fighting against. It's the evil powers that we can't see that we're fighting against. So let's work this out.
And I think it's actually becoming more and more evident the further we get into this whole wherever we're at in society. I've heard more people now say that it's literally a battle between good and evil than I ever have before. Mm-hmm. And so that's not, I don't know. It's crazy where we're at.
Yeah.
But standing firm in your faith and knowing you can't go wrong.
Yeah. I agree.
I'm with you. Thank you, Troy.
You are welcome.
Ephesians 6:12 through 13.
Yeah.
All right. I think take us out, man. I need some music here.
Oh, you want some music?
That'd be great.
And
there it faded is. It in. Thank you for joining Hardheaded Podcast. It's been wonderful having you with us. Please take some time to review us, like us, share us, visit us, comment on whether or not we were off on our top 3. Who did we miss? That we love doing the research. Give us some more people to look up. Hashtag join the conversation. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.
Right on.
You guys didn't tell me my shirt was on backwards the whole time.
Is it inside out?
Oh, it's all backwards. I reached up and I was like, that seam is not supposed to be there. Thanks a lot, guys.
I thought it was just bunched up. It did look kind of odd.
Yeah, thanks.
I just thought you were wearing a smaller shirt.
Yeah.